Each episode of Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain with Dr. Ruth Allan is for educational and demonstration purposes only. The information shared in each episode should not be interpreted as medical advice. This episode should not be used to self-diagnose or self-treat any health, medical, or physical condition. Do not use this episode to avoid going to your healthcare professional or to replace the advice they give you. Consult with a trusted healthcare professional before doing anything contained in this episode. If you have any questions or concerns, please contact www.ruthmaryallen.com/connect. Welcome to the show, Brain Health Unchaining Your Pain. I am delighted to be joined by the incredibly successful Calvin Correli. Welcome to the show, Calvin.
Thank you, Ruth. It's amazing to be here with you. I'm really pumped for this conversation.
I'm really excited because I was reading your story earlier on, and it's been a real roller coaster for you. So I'm excited to dive into your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I'm sure many of my listeners will be really looking forward to hearing. But before we start, for those that don't know, Calvin Correli is a speaker, author, investor, spiritual teacher, and founder of Simplero, an all-in-one platform that helps coaches and course creators simplify their lives. He's been a coder since the age of 5. And Calvin thinks in systems and constant optimization of every aspect of business and life. And I love that because I used to be on a BBC B when I was a kid, when we had tape machines, and I used to write code to build pictures as a child. So I completely relate to writing code as a kid. What got you into code?
My parents did. So my parents were amongst the first in the country I'm from, which is Denmark, and probably amongst the first, fairly first in the world that got into computers and programming. There was literally 5 computers in the entire country at the time that they started programming. It was punch cards and, sleeping in sleeping bags and waking up at 3 a.m. because they had 30 minutes at a computer to run some punch cards through it and stuff like that. And so my mom started a software company before the PC was invented in 1980.
Oh, wow.
And my dad would spend his evenings teaching me how to code, and I loved it.
Yeah, I really loved it too. And I loved the opportunity to build. You could visually see what you'd done.
100%. Yeah.
With
it's
the
so
code
fun.
that you'd written, even though it was fairly basic, but I really loved it.
Yeah. It never gets old. Now I have a team that doesn't, the almost all the building, but it's still that feeling of creating, of making something happen that wasn't there before. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it comes out of nothing, doesn't it? It comes out of ones and zeros and bits of words that, if you were to write it on a board, doesn't mean anything to anybody. But in the computing world, it creates just amazing things that other people can utilize. So
yeah, that's amazing.
I love it. So tell me what you're passionate about in life right now.
I'm really passionate about the spiritual journey as an entrepreneur. That spiritual growth as an entrepreneur has always, for me, been the thing that has moved the needle the most. Right? A lot of people are so focused on what's the how-to and what's the strategy or the tactics or the 7-step process to whatever. And I've always found every single time that it's the inner shifts. It's something that was an unconscious belief that becomes conscious, and now I can choose whether I'm going to stick to it or not, or keep it or not, or change it, or some pain or wound that I was trying to avoid contacting and feeling. Those are the things that really move the needle. So I am starting a high-end mastermind group for successful founders. So founders, entrepreneurs that are doing 7 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, to focus on that inner work, on that inner growth. And the reason why is 4 years ago, I had the privilege of being on Richard Branson's private island, on Necker Island, with a bunch of very, very successful entrepreneurs. And I just noticed how many of them, even though they had multiple jets, some of them multiple private jets each, a lot of them were struggling. They're great at the business and making money, but they're struggling with their health or their relationships, or sense of purpose and meaning or their relationship to themselves. And so for me, that group is about two things. It's about, unblocking yourself for business success, but really for that complete life success, right? Like, why are we doing what we're doing if not because we want to live a full, integrated, fulfilling, satisfying life? So I'm super pumped about that.
I love that, because I think so many of us, like you mentioned, focus on the how to, rather than focusing on that deep inner work that we often ignore. And it's the one thing that is the big needle mover, and it's the one thing that stays with us.
Totally. Right.
And it's totally within our control to change. No one else can change it.
Yep.
We have to do the deep inner work. We have to heal ourselves from the inside out.
Speaking of Richard Branson, right? He will for $200,000, he's going to take you in one of his Virgin Galactic rockets into outer space so you can have that experience. He can't take you to inner space, right? You can only do that on your own.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. And if only we had the right, I think one of the challenges is finding the right person to help you navigate that rocket.
You can get a guide and a mentor and a coach or someone, right? And I've had plenty, and it's incredibly helpful. But at the end of the day, you have to do the work. You can't just get in some kind of vehicle and it does it for you. It doesn't work that way.
No. So with that in mind, I'd love to know, talking about inner work, what does optimal brain health mean for you personally in the context of your life's journey?
It's I would say it's a combination of things. There's the whole belief system, all the unconscious, subconscious stuff, unraveling that, peeling away those layers and just becoming aware of some of those things. That's a huge part of it, right? You can literally see in people kind of what their dominant beliefs are in the wrinkles in their face. Like their face starts to take the shape of their beliefs over the time, right? Exactly. So that's a huge part of it. But the other massive part is what we put in our bodies or on our bodies or surround ourselves with, right? Like I was fascinated with, I remember years ago thinking about like Bill Gates, like loves eating cheeseburgers. I really think that eat enough of those and it like that becomes the cells of which your body is composed. Like that really impacts your brain and your ability to think. So diet is crucial, right? A lot of people have brain fog. They have like just, I don't know, like decay, like even Alzheimer's, dementia, and things that are definitely diet related. I think that's safe to say at this point, right? But then there's also all the toxins in our environment that harms our brains and our health in general.
Yeah, I love that. And you touched on some of the elements that I like to talk about in the context of health, which is, first of all, our spiritual health, but also our physical health. And all of that, I think, when you mention the importance of diet, is people don't necessarily connect the spiritual element of cognitive health or brain health to what they are doing, which includes putting in or on their bodies, and also doing in their environment, and how they're allowing their environment to do things to them, if that makes sense. And I think we often don't think, we think, okay, we kind of get in denial, don't we, about what food we're eating. And I have this all the time with people I talk to. I eat really healthy, and then you ask them to recite what foods they've eaten and get them to write it down and to understand how the food is shifting their mood and affecting them ultimately spiritually. And they suddenly realize there's this strong correlation or connection between the food that they're putting into their bodies and how it's showing up for them from a emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual perspective.
100% right. And a lot of times we use the food to avoid to feel certain things and go certain places, right?
Yeah. I'd love if you could take us back to a time when you did actually do that, because I've been reading your fantastic bio and the detail of your life's journey. I wonder if you could take us back to the time where where you were using it as an avoidance tool and you had your aha moment?
For sure. Yeah, I was, I mean, for me, a lot of it was alcohol related. So like having wine with dinner and, you know, I didn't know much about, food, like health in terms of foods. I was like very Italio, file. So lots of pasta and things of that nature. But yeah, like I think it was the red wine with dinner, like 3 to 4 nights a week.
I
That was
used to
really
do
my
that.
big escape, right? Like that, yeah. Trying to avoid. I would dream and fantasize about all the things that I wanted to do, but I wouldn't really take action on it because I was scared of many things. I was scared that I didn't have it in me, or I wouldn't succeed, or it would be dangerous or whatnot. I mean, to the point where actually, so this is one of my books is Show Up and Serve. And I had a cartoon artist draw this cartoon at the beginning. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Oh, I love that.
It
Oh,
says
yeah.
heaven on one of the doors, and then it says books about heaven on the other. And he's like scratching his head for those that are just watching. And that was very much my life. I was like, you know, if I could watch a podcast or an interview or like read a book about some other people who were doing the things, you know, that kind of scratched that itch a little bit. And then I didn't have to actually go do the thing and be scared.
Wow. And what was it? What was the big shifter for you? You know, it was the fear of being successful, was it, that you were using alcohol to avoid the hard work? Was it, would you say that was what was happening?
I think a big part, that was part of it, but at that time it was very much the thing I was struggling with was not looking for my purpose in life. Like avoiding looking at why I was here and what I really wanted to do. And I was so busy just doing what I thought I had to do to be quote unquote successful and make money and to the point where I had this thought that said, well, like we're struggling financially right now, so I don't have time to look at that. Mm-hmm. But the reality was that I was scared to look at what my purpose was. And so I would keep manufacturing financial struggles so I would have an excuse not to look at it. I finally one day did decide to sit down and ask myself that question, what am I here to do? And the answer really kind of downloaded to me that I'm here to integrate spirituality and entrepreneurship. And that was in 2008. It's stayed like true to this day. That still feels like my core calling. But on the backside of that, I recognized, the reason I had been so scared of looking at that was, number one, I was afraid that there was no answer, right? That there is no purpose, no meaning. And that would be super painful to find out. Like, I believe that most people had some kind of purpose or you know, thing they were here to do, but maybe God kind of forgot to give me one. That was my fear. Like, what if I'm the broken one? I'm the odd one out. That was like, yeah, guy was too busy, didn't have time or something, right? So
did you ever have that? Can I just pause you there? I'm just curious. Did you ever have that in your past where you felt forgotten?
Did I ever feel forgotten? I mean, yes, I would say, and feeling wrong has been a big thing. But yeah, I mean, that brings me back to my birth, which was strangled in my own umbilical cord, and so started life with a near-death experience, and then they got me to breathe eventually, and then they put me in an incubator for 48 hours, and so one might imagine feeling a little forgotten, a little left.
Yeah, and absolutely, that would have imprinted itself from birth for you.
Yeah.
And you just manufactured environmental situations that told you that you validated your first birthing experience.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I don't think people realize how our very early childhood, including birth and also pre-birthing experience, and my daughter had a very traumatic birthing experience herself. I think she had to have a C-section, but how impactful that can be for people throughout their life, because you keep it's already imprinted in your memory, even though you might not even remember it.
100%,
you may have been told about it. It's there.
Yeah. For me, I learned about this probably like 15 years ago, I was at a workshop with a lady named
Uh-huh.
Debbie Ford, who was, big back in the day. And one of the exercises was this anger release. And we would all sit in chairs and then blindfolded, and they would have like thunder, like sounds of thunderstorms. And then they'd go around like, think of all the people who hurt you. And I would like to see it, whatever, like make you like riled up, and then like breathing exercise. And then they were like, okay, go, and just like rage. And I was like raged on for 10 minutes or something. And then at the end of it, it was like all quiet. And then this vision came to my mind of like of the birth room and everybody panicking and something was wrong. And I wasn't sure what it was. So I went and asked my mom about it. And then she told me what had happened. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
this makes sense.
Wow. So you were releasing the sensual experience from your birthing experience, and then triggered your memory back to that experience by releasing the anger, which was probably trying to get out and escape the stranglehold.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. So you, gosh, well, we could go so deep here, couldn't we? This is brilliant. I love it. So you went, you had your sort of awakening. How did that manifest in the context of you realized that you were trying to just escape the need to sit, pause, and reflect on what your purpose was? How did that manifest after that?
So it gave me so much direction. So I was talking about the 3 fears that I realized. Number one was like, maybe there's nothing there. Number two was maybe it'll take me forever to find it, like 10 years, 20 years. It seemed like for an eternity back then. And then the third was maybe there is something and I'll find it pretty quick, but I won't like it. Because I had some very preconceived notions about what, like the kind of person that I wanted to be. It's a big part of it for me was like realizing that I'm a different person than who I thought I wanted to be. And I spent a lot of time kind of wanting to be anyone but me. And I realized that even not that long ago, I was like, I haven't been thinking about it for too much lately. But then a month ago, I had a fingerprint hand analysis by a guy named Richard Unger, who's like, I don't know if you've come across him, but he's like super fascinating. So he'll look at your fingerprints, and based on the combination of 4 different types of prints on your 10 digits, out of that comes a life purpose statement, one or more life lessons, and a life school. So it's like kind of informs your life. And so I had a reading with him back in the fall, I think October, November. And then I went back and listened to it a little while ago. And the way he laid out, like, this is you, and these are the kind of different things that all add up to some of your core gifts that you bring to this world and purpose. I was like, holy crap, that makes sense. And there's literally no other person on the planet that I'd like to be more. So that was a major shift for me, because that was definitely not how I felt. Like 15 years ago, I just wanted to be anyone but me.
Wow. And I guess you were doing lots of things to avoid it and to try and be someone that you've manifested in your mind that was supposed to be you, because that's what you deemed successful. Is that
100%.
Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it wasn't the success that you really wanted or needed.
Yeah. And it never really kind of worked for me, because it's kind of like that Roadrunner cartoon that's like running in midair, right? If you're not really in it and really being yourself, it just never seemed to work out for me.
Yeah. And so going back to that sort of aha moment and the fear factor, what did you end up doing next? What were the next steps for you to move, either towards your fear and realize that you can overcome it, or move or do something to nullify it?
It was a huge watershed moment, because what happened before that, I was trying all kinds of different things, like, a publishing company and a software company and all the things with different people. And I kept like hoping that I would find some other person who had the secret success sauce. So, because I didn't seem to be able to make anything happen. And then I'd partner up with them and try something, and it didn't quite work out. And then after this, I knew it was so clear to me what I was here to do. And I could just feel it so deeply. I could see the complete vision of how it would all play out. And that's what got me going, like, oh, I need to teach this. Like, before that, I'd been on a 5-year spiritual journey. It's like,
You
oh,
went to India. Is that part that's part of your spiritual
that
journey, right?
came later. Yeah, India was not
Okay.
really a spiritual journey for me.
Okay.
It was not in that way, but I mean, it
Okay.
was, but not like in that way. But no, that came much later. But the it was what I realized was that the things that I had learned about how you relate to your thoughts and your beliefs and your subconscious programming, how you relate to your feelings, discovering your purpose and relating to that, living in the present moment, not in the past and the future, and really opening your heart and growing to expand in love. That to me is the essence of the work as an entrepreneur. Right?
Yeah.
That as a human, but also as an entrepreneur. So I was like, I need to teach these things that I've learned to other entrepreneurs, and I started doing that. But I didn't know. I was just a programmer who had started, software company, was doing okay, but I didn't know anything about teaching this kind of stuff to other people. I didn't know anything about seminars or workshops or any of that. So I started researching that, and that's what led me to discover this whole world of online courses. And I was like, that's amazing, I can do that. And so I got into online courses, and then I started writing the software for it, and then that became Simplero, which is my main business today, right? So it came directly from wanting to teach this stuff. So it was really a big shift from, let me try this, that. Like nothing was coherent. There's no cohesiveness to it. There's all points in different directions, to now everything that I've been doing since has been in in the same direction and really supported each other.
Wow, I love that. And what did you notice? Obviously, once the everything started to come together, what was the big shift from you internally? What did you know? Because you said when you started it, you didn't want to be the person that you became, or you were scared about what that person might be, and it wasn't someone that you wanted to be. So how did you kind of internally transition into the person you are now, which
Yeah,
you're much more spiritually aware and comfortable with?
I think there's a moment of surrender, of just like, okay, like clearly this is who I am. Like, might as well stop fighting it, right? Like, stop trying to be something else. And then gradually, like, growing into that. Like, it's definitely been a long journey of learning to love myself.
Oh,
And yeah, it was like that's been happening in bits and pieces. I think a big movement was, when has this been? Like probably 10 years ago or something. I discovered Gay Hendricks, and he has an incredible book, Learning to Love Yourself, which was a watershed thing for me. And the idea being that instead of trying to like actively love myself, that really the trick is to cultivate a willingness to love yourself. Because
so a desire to.
what I found is that the self-love is natural. Like, it's already there. It's just covered up by false beliefs. And so if we can find that willingness, that just creates that tiny gap that can let some of that love that's already there shine through, and then that gap is automatically going to open kind of by itself. So just for me, that was the nugget of just cultivating the willingness even.
And how did you I love this conversation. How did you cultivate the willingness? What were the key steps for you to go from not really
I think it was
to kind of
recognizing,
opening the curtain of possibility and love that would shine through?
it was recognizing that the self-hate was something that I was doing. And so being able to see it, and then it was more of a decision point. Okay, I'm willing.
Yeah.
I don't know how, I don't know what I need to do, but I'm willing, and just, okay, sitting with that willingness and feeling that.
We often say, like, from a brain health perspective, it's really important to fall in love with your brain. And we don't tend to think about our brain as an object that we should fall in love with. We just see it as a functional entity. But actually, it's the sort of main controller, although that's open to debate. But it's a key controller in our bodily system. And it's one of the biggest controllers of the thoughts that we have, and what we allow ourselves to do and what we stop ourselves from doing. And when we take that time to really fall in love with our brain, we're much more likely, when we've got a good relationship, because we are the first and the last relationship we'll ever have is the one we have with ourselves. It is that we'll do the things that help us and we'll avoid the things that hurt us.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're not in love with ourselves, then we don't tend to care about ourselves in the way that we would care about a lover.
Yeah.
Or
100%.
someone we're in love with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what in that context, what did you notice shift in terms of the actions? So you open the door of possibility, you let the love start to shine through. What shifts did you notice in yourself personally in terms of the activities you were doing or the actions were you doing, either internally to yourself or externally within the world itself?
It's a good question. Give me 1 second. I need to close the door here. Someone was like,
no, that's fine.
Open these. I have a dog that loves to run in and out. So she's very sweet.
That's all right, no problem.
She's down here.
So what did you start doing in the context of your actions when that light started to shine through? What shifts did you know?
I'm trying to think back, like what did shift. I mean, I
because you got more fit, right, didn't you? So you started eating, you were eating a quite destructively.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
Things started moving.
That's funny. That kind of came later. So what happened there was I was working with a mentor, still a mentor, friend, business partner now. And I was there with my wife, and we were really struggling in our relationship at the time. And his diagnosis was, look, Calvin, you are like 80% in your feminine and only 20% in your masculine. And your masculine is very young and wounded. He's like a hurt 8-year-old boy. Right. Wow. And so we need to help him grow up to be a healthy male adult. And my wife was the opposite. Right. So she was 80% of her masculine, and which is natural. Right. That's like polarity, opposites attract. So it's only natural that it would be that way. And so the journey that we've been on as a couple since then has been, how do we switch that around while staying together and just supporting each other in that journey? And it's been amazing. And one of the things that came out of that for me was, all right, I need to start building my body and work out much more consistently. At the time, it was like, if I was working out 3 hours a week, I had a personal trainer, I felt pretty good about that. Maybe I would do yoga, a few times or whatnot. But it was like 3 hours a week, I felt like I was doing pretty good. And he was like, yeah, that's not going to cut it. Like, you need to do 8 hours a week. And it was like completely mind blowing to me. But I was like, okay, if that's what you say, I'll make that happen. And so I committed to myself to do 8 hours a week. These days I do way more than that, but I was like 8 hours a week, tracking it using a spreadsheet. I kept that going for over a year, and it was super helpful. And what I noticed was that like a month or two in, my palate started changing. The other thing I did was add a meal replacement powder called Body Meal as my breakfast. So it's a protein, green superfoods, vitamins and minerals mixed with water. I do that for my breakfast. And that combined with exercise, like my palate started changing. So instead of craving pizza and cheeseburgers, which was my go-to before, I started just craving more salads, more healthy things. They didn't appeal to me as much.
Yeah.
And I also stopped desiring alcohol. So it was like, what I noticed was that when I never liked the day after. I was always bad with like hangovers, and just like my brain wasn't fully functional the day after, even just like 2 glasses of wine or something. But what started happening was I noticed that as I took that first sip of wine, it was like my brain deteriorated, and I liked that feeling less than what I'd felt right before, because I actually started to feel good just being me, just being sober, which was kind of new. And so I ended up quitting alcohol completely. And just since then, it's been a journey of just like getting cleaner and cleaner. So these days I don't do any alcohol. I don't do any caffeine. I don't do any like straight sugar. I don't do like any of the drugs that society is on. I just eat a very plant-based.
Clean.
Yeah.
And I think, I rarely do alcohol. I can't say I'm 100% alcohol free, But what I do notice, I used to drink a lot of alcohol when I was in my dark days. And I used it again as a means to avoid the pain that I was in, and avoid the action I needed to take. But what I notice now is, because I'm so clean in the context of alcohol, when I do drink it, I kind of get an instant hangover, and I really don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
It depends which beverage it is, but it tends to come on before I've finished the drink.
Yeah.
Whereas previously, I wouldn't, I'd get the enjoyment out of it, and then it would come later that night or the following morning.
Right.
But having been, off alcohol for so long, it kind of instantly hits you. I completely understand
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
you're coming from. You just don't. It's just not It's not an enjoyable experience.
Right. I was like, why? Like, right.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just not. It was funny because I had an experience when I was on Necker Island, like I mentioned before. There's a lot of alcohol there. And at one point, there's this beach volley game between the staff and the guests. And there's like, whenever you score a point, the other team has to do a shot or something like that. And like, I was watching the game, I wasn't playing, but then one of the staff members came running past where I was sitting with a tray of like empty shot glasses to go to get it filled up. And they were getting pretty hammered. And so he looked over at me as I was sitting there watching, and he said, "You're lucky you don't drink." And in my mind, I was like, look, dude, luck has nothing to do with it. It's just a decision. It's just a choice that you make, right? But it's so funny. Like, it's funny that way of thinking of like, you're lucky you don't, like, it's like, oh my God, poor me, I have to drink. It's like, no, you don't.
It's this dependency culture though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Going back to our earlier days, is we had this dependency on using it to self-medicate ourselves away
100%, yeah.
from stuff.
No, I get it. But there's also that whole social obligation, right?
Yeah.
You're playing this game and you're like, you know what? Like, yeah, I had alcohol like last night. It's not like I don't drink, but I don't want to drink today. So I'm not going to drink that. Oh, come on. Yeah. Like, yeah, all right, part of the team, blah, blah, blah. Right. So I totally get that social part. It's funny though, because a lot of people are really worried about that when it comes to quitting alcohol. I've never had an issue. Isn't
it interesting?
Yeah.
And I guess it depends on the culture that you either perceive you're in or you're actually in. And sometimes the perception is a lot. We make a mountain out of a molehill sometimes, not all the time.
I think a lot of it's just too, how you feel about it, your own commitment about it. For me, it's just like, it's not even a thing, right? So like, no, I don't drink. So I don't make it like, oh, come on. It's like, no, right? Like, I don't engage because like, there's no.
And I think also if you've got people that don't respect your life choices, whether that's the drink or your relationships or your business choice or whatever it happens to be, and you're showing up as your true authentic self, then maybe it's time to go and find some
100%.
different friends.
And there are definitely relationships and contexts that I had that was all about the alcohol, and like now that was not, like, I just stopped doing those. So I was seeing those people, right? So because ultimately you want to surround yourself with people that lift you up, not the ones that pull you down. Yeah.
So
I was thinking too, when you were talking about like how you feel like you get instant hangovers, I had a chocolate croissant like a couple months ago, and like not having done any caffeine or sugar or gluten for that matter, like I had the jitters for like 3 hours after one chocolate croissant. It's quite wild. Yeah.
Wow. And doesn't that just go to show how out of tune our bodies become with all of these fake fast foods?
Exactly.
And ultra processed foods.
You get numbed out and you don't even know like the load that your body's carrying. Like, it's something that I'm deeply passionate about is how most of us treat our bodies really poorly. We're like, oh, why are you fat? Why are you this? Like, why are you like we criticize our bodies so much, even if just in our own minds and not speaking out loud. But that attitude where the reality is that our bodies are working 24/7 for us. Our bodies love us so much, and we treat it like garbage day in and day out, right? We fill it with stuff. We don't give it enough sleep. proper exercise, or we, pollute it with toxins either that we put inside our mouths or on our skin, and we just treat it like crap. And then we criticize it for, I mean, like, no, it loves you, love it back.
Yeah. And actually it's interesting you say that, because Why We Eat Too Much is a book by Dr. Andrew Jenkinson, I think. And he writes about the fact that our body, when we get fat, although that's not a necessarily political correct term these days, but when our body stores weight around our waist, it's actually the safest place for your body to store toxins, because it doesn't want to store those toxins on your liver or your other vital organs, which will poison them and kill you. And so it's being kind to you by storing it around your middle, because that's the safest, least harmful place for it to put the stuff that it doesn't want. So if you are a person that's like, oh, I hate my body, be thankful that your body is protecting you, and take action to help your body help you.
And detoxing gently, and like a lot of it is emotional stuff as well, right? It's not just like, it's emotional toxins that get stored in your body and then wrapped in fat, and that needs to be cleaned out as well.
Agree. So where did you go on your journey then? So you had this you started moving towards founding your company, to build your business. You felt in alignment, you were focusing on spirituality. Where did that lead you? Where did it take you next?
It's a continuing journey, isn't it? Like a spiral journey. Look, I recognized one of the shifts that happened for me this year was realizing that I have for several years now kind of created struggles for myself where I would succeed, but not like fully succeed, whether it was, in sculpting the body that I want, or, business results. There would always be like this, like up and down kind of thing. I'm not like unsuccessful, but I'm not really where I want to be either. So it's like I was operating in this band, and it wasn't really moving much. And I was feeling into that. And what I recognized was that there was we spoke about earlier, this sense of feeling wrong, feeling that there's something wrong with me. That was kind of my I think all humans have this feeling of, or belief system around being inadequate somehow, right? Being not enough, not good enough, not whatever it is, right? From like we're born, and then our parents say, like at some point, a parent is like, stop doing that, don't do that, don't be this way. And we think, oh, just being me is not enough. I need to be something else, right? That core mechanism is with all of us, and it just takes different flavors, but it's the same system. So for me, a lot of it was around feeling just fundamentally wrong in some way, broken. There's something flawed, something broken about me. But what I realized then was I had this big fear of succeeding wildly, or like just like fully succeeding, if you will, in all the ways that I wanted to, that if I did that, I would lose all my relationships, that I wouldn't be able to relate to other people. If I was successful, I would be this arrogant asshole, and like everybody would reject me. I would be betraying my family, because in my family, we're not someone who just like wildly succeeds in health and wealth and relationships and creative purpose and all of it. It's not something that we do in my family. So I'd be betraying that family. And I was like, once I realized that, I was like, oh my God, like when I visualized achieving all of the things that I was wanted and working on, what I noticed was this deep pain and this like deep lump in my belly. And I was like, what's that about? Right? Like, what is that? And I started feeling into it. And that's when I recognized, oh my God, that's the pattern. And so what I noticed was that fear of success, if you will, was what was keeping this idea of being broken or wrong in some way stuck, right? That I kept, I was working on trying to fix the I'm wrong, I'm broken pattern, but without addressing the why am I so afraid of not being broken pattern. I wasn't getting anywhere.
Wow. And that also kind of ties back into what we discussed earlier, is when you are, you mentioned this fear of losing relationships and stuff. It's almost that fear of abandonment that you had as a child when you were first born. Is you were you were fearing the physical manifestation of how you arrived in this world. Is that fear of being alone?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you didn't want that. You didn't want to manifest that for yourself. So you kind of
made that connection.
did everything to avoid it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm getting coaching here right here on the call. I appreciate that.
No, you're most welcome. But we there's a connectivity there, isn't there? And it will run throughout your life. Is realizing I can succeed and have these relationships. I'm not going to be alone, because I'm not I'm not that child anymore.
Yeah,
I can break free. I can break that chain.
Yeah,
and step into the person I'm capable of being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you, Ruth.
You're most welcome. So you managed to break the ceiling and break through that. What was the big shifter for you that allowed you to do that?
It was really seeing it, right? And I think what broke it for me was a sense of, so I was at an event. So this is pretty recent, all of it. So a couple months ago, I was at an event with a bunch of other founders, and I felt so miserable there because everybody, we meet 3 times a year, and everybody was like making progress, and they were like, things were like, I did this and it worked great, and like this and it worked great. All I just felt such like a loser. Like I felt like, oh my God, like everybody else is like, doing so great and I'm not. And I know that I'm not the only one in the group that feels that way. Like when you go to those meetings and people show their highlight reels and all that stuff, right? It's very easy to feel like an imposter. But oftentimes what I would do in that case is I would go back to sort of spiritual beliefs around everything is exactly as it should be, and, loving what is and appreciating everything as it is. But this time I went a different path. I was like, I'm fed up with this. I'm so done with this garbage. Like I got really angry and really intense. Like I'm done. No more. Right. And I got this deep commitment, this deep decision to like, I'm done. I want to break through this thing now. And that's what got me to start looking. All right, we're doing it now. We're breaking through the ceiling.
Yeah.
Visualize, what does that feel like? Oh my God, there's so much pain here, right? Like Gay Hendricks talks about upper limits. Those are those beliefs that and behaviors that you do, like worrying or getting in an accident or whatever, that knocks you down. The beliefs that you have around, like I had a thing too with outshining, because I learned to read before my older brother. So like the same time. And it was like that feeling that it was great that I was so smart and so good, but it made everybody feel really uncomfortable. So don't do that, right? So I have to tone myself down, not be too smart, not be too good. So there's a lot around that. Tony Robbins talks about neuroassociative conditioning. So like, what are the things, like I had associated success with a lot of pain. And so when you have that association in your brain, obviously you're not going to do that because there's pain there, right? So it's like really getting awareness and journaling. So I have a morning ritual, which is I work out, and then I go to the sauna for like 45 minutes. And in the sauna, I do some stretches and I do journaling. So
wow, I love that. I've never heard someone do that in a sauna.
It's amazing. I have this, like, if you go on, like, I was like, this is years ago. I was like, I wonder if someone has invented a notepad that you can write on when it's wet. And I went on Amazon and dang, they have them. So
the military use it all the time.
It's amazing. Like, I love this country. So I found that, and what I find is that journaling in the sauna is perfect because the heat kind of slows my brain down just enough to get to some of that juicy stuff that I can't as easily get to when I'm, at a normal temperature.
Yeah. I love that. And what have you really noticed in the sauna that, in the journaling process? Because I often find swimming, because I kind of have to go into a Zen zone. When I go swimming, I have some really aha moments, and I love going to the sauna too. What's been have you had any shifts that you've noticed by doing that practice?
I mean, the one I just shared was major, right? So what I'll do is I'll go to the whatever I'm struggling with, whatever's up for me at the time. And if there's some emotional, something where I'm like stressed or just feeling not very good about it, I'll start writing it out. It's like a daily ritual for me. So I really love it. Highly recommend it.
Wow, I love that. And I just super curious if you can share, because I know you didn't used to be called Calvin. If you could share that story.
Oh, totally.
The listener.
Yeah. So the name, I'm born and raised in Denmark, and I live in New York City now. And the name that my parents gave me was Lars Holger Pind, which is sort of very Danish name. And I moved to New York in 1999 for the first time. And then like nobody could pronounce my first name and nobody could spell or pronounce my last name. And it was just like complicated in this country. And because I never really liked the name either, I was open to changing it. And so I met my current wife, when was that, like 13 years ago now, and she had already changed her name using a numerologist, and that was new to me at the time. But I happened to meet a bunch of people around the same time who'd also done that, and so I was like, okay, might as well. And so I went to see one, and then he gave me some numbers. And then based on the numbers, you kind of reverse engineer that back to names. And that was when it dawned on me, oh my God, I'm going to have to actually change my names. It was like scary. And I sat on it for months, and then finally sat down with Nomi, my wife, and looked over some lists. And then the name Calvin just popped out at me because Calvin Coolidge was the 30th president of the United States. And there was this quote by him that really, really, really kept me going through many, many years where I was struggling. And I would keep looking at this quote, and like I was really scared that, again, there would be no purpose, that I'd never, quote unquote, make it, right? That I was like always going to be struggling, because I felt like I was constantly banging my head up against the wall. And so I'd read this quote over and over again, which says, nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent.
What a great quote.
It is so good. And it really is still like a guiding light for me. And I'm like, if persistence and determination are good enough for the president of the United States, they're good enough for me. And that's I've done that always. Like, I just keep going. It doesn't always work out the first time or the second or the third or the fourth or the fifth. And who cares? Life is long. The only time is now. And so there's no rush. There's nowhere to get to. There's no hurry. So just, keep trucking on.
I'd love to draw in on that hurry, because we're kind of in a really hurried world, aren't we? This desire to become successful in a certain period of time. And if you haven't, you're never going to be successful.
Yeah.
Or, you know, that's a kind of expectation, or you have to follow a certain path to be successful. And I think that quote really says it all, is that you just need to follow the path that's right for you.
Yeah.
At your own pace.
There is no time, right? Time is literally an illusion. So, like, what are we rushing for? Yeah. Enjoy.
And how have you used that to go back to your mindset? Because you mentioned, like, I am done. I'm done with this. How have you used that, quote, and the importance that sits behind it or within it?
I mean, whenever there's setbacks, of which there's been many, is like, and other people. I remember I had an accountant at one point who was like, not everybody is made out to be an entrepreneur, a business owner. Maybe you should just quit. And I was like, F you. Like, it's like, just because I'm struggling now doesn't mean I'll be struggling a year from now. And not just business, right? But health and relationships and creativity and purpose and all of these things. Like, most people, again, back to Necker Island, most people succeed in one area. Yeah. And then they completely miss all the other areas, right? Or they're like, well, but like they have a great relationship, but then they tell themselves that, like, but you can't, like, if you're going to be great in business, it's going to like cause your marriage to suffer or your kids or whatever. So I'm not going to do that. They tell themselves a story of limitation that they can't do it all. And I just don't buy into that. I want every single aspect of my life to be amazing. And it's not that like it's not amazing now, or like it's that I'm unhappy where I am. I'm really big on loving everything exactly the way it is and still having that hunger and desire to make it different. Not because I hate the way it is, but because I'm pumped about the infinite creative potential of this universe and this life.
Yeah.
Like,
Do you know, I love that, because I think we think that people want more just because it's more.
mm-hmm.
But actually, often it's the opportunity to create.
Exactly. That's the game. Right.
You know, it's not
like,
necessarily about more.
It's like we make stuff out of Legos, right? We're just kids, like they're just like building stuff. Like that's what's fun, and we get to do it with other people, right? It's that process of building stuff out of nothing. Like we started the conversation talking about, right? Like programming. You're creating something out of nothing. That's what we do every single day with amazing people, and we just have so much fun.
Yeah, and it goes back to that childhood spirit, and I've talked about this with so many people on my show. Is this you know, Steve Sims says go for stupid, because that's where the opportunity often is, and that's where the real excitement is to do the things that where there are no boundaries and no limits, because we've just manufactured these limits in our mind.
Totally.
But actually that we are limitless, as Jim.
When you think about that, like how far do you want to take that? Because I don't know if have you ever read Autobiography of a Yogi?
No, I haven't, but I've heard of it. I'm going to put that on my book list.
Paramahansa Yogananda, right? Yeah. So it was supposedly it was the one book that Steve Jobs had on his iPad when he died, and it was one that had really impacted him. And so of course I read it. And in that book are these gurus who are hundreds of years old, who can literally manifest out of nothing in a place, and they're real as real as it can be. They can be in multiple places at once. There is the story of how one of these gurus takes him out into the desert, and then from nothing just manifests this whole castle with, you know, servants and helpers, and produces this amazing meal for him and all that stuff. And then when they're done, it's just poof, gone again. Like there's put that in one side. Then there's another book called The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch, which talks about science and the scientific method and evolution. And where one of the points he makes is that instead of talking about Einstein's theory of relativity, talk about Einstein's misconception of relativity, because whatever theory we have today is just the best theory we have so far. The only thing we know for certain is that at some point we're going to have a better theory, and this one is going to be our best misconception today. And that's always going to be the case. And the point he makes is that anything that is theoretically possible under the laws of physics of the universe, eventually we will be able to do. Like humanity will eventually be able to do it. And I've checked with friends who are PhDs in physics and whatnot. There's nothing in physics that would prevent us from manifesting in multiple places or becoming hundreds of years old and doing like levitate and doing any of these things. Like all of it is possible within the laws of physics. And so, I mean, then we can talk about Rupert Sheldrake, who says there are no laws of physics. There are only habits that the world embodies, because like maybe they're not actually laws. Who knows, right? And he has good reasons for why not. All of this to say that the possibilities are way beyond what most of us can even imagine.
And I absolutely agree. And I like to think of our bodies as vessels, because actually within our bodies, we're housing trillions of other bodies called bacteria and fungi and so on.
And this whole idea that we are this body or this like mass inside of a bag of skin is also false. We're constantly exchanging with the environment. Like it doesn't make any sense to talk about me as separate from everything else. This doesn't make any sense.
And how many times talking about quantum physics, which I love, how many times do we have something happen to us? Somebody gets in contact with us somewhere in the world that we least expect, but suddenly they get a trigger that they need to talk to you, or a phone call happens, I was talking to a friend today. She sent someone an email, a Facebook request, and they'd never opened their Facebook for 18 years. And then that one time they opened it half an hour after she sent the message of a picture of them and so on. Louise, if you're listening. So I think, we have all of these quantum shifts that happen that we maybe can't explain yet, but you can't say that just by chance. There's something beyond what we know today. So,
and like, obviously there is. Like, it's, I mean, you all almost have to be stupid not to see it and believe it. Like, we've been indoctrinated so much to believe in, like, there's only 3 dimensions and that's all that exists, right? Like, and we're gonna conquer those. Like, and it's like, yeah, good luck with that. Yeah.
So I know we're coming to the end now. What would you advice would you give? I want to go back to that moment where you're like, I'm done with this, and this kind of perception when we're entrepreneurs that we feel that we are in this imposter syndrome space, or we're making ourselves a less than we actually are. What advice would you give to anyone who's experienced that place where they kind of feel they're in that imposter syndrome world? They're surrounded by highly successful people and they don't think they can get there. What would your one piece of advice be to someone?
I mean, the simple answer is know and value yourself. That's where it all starts. But I want to also say that, like, to me, usually the answer is, instead of trying to do something, right? Like, I want to, like, not feel like an imposter, or I want to be successful, I want to fit in, or something like that. Like, ask yourself the question, what am I currently doing actively, even if unconsciously, to create this thing? The natural state is that you're just there. You don't feel any imposter syndrome, or that you don't belong, or that you're not successful enough, or anything. Like, put a baby into that room and the baby is not going to be like, oh my God, I don't believe, like, that's not a thing that babies do. So it was something that we learned at some point, and now it's just become a habit and we keep doing it. So seeing it, that it's something that we're doing, and then cultivating the willingness to maybe not do that.
Yeah. I love that. It's get curious in that moment to understand the why behind your behavior. I love that. Calvin, honestly, I think we could talk a really long time about all things spirituality, but we have to bring this to a close. So how can people get hold of you, learn more about your business, yourself, and what you do, and all of the fantastic opportunities that you offer in the context of your company for those that are entrepreneurs?
Yeah, if you're an entrepreneur and you're doing an online business, maybe you're a coach or course creator or some other kind of creator, you have an audience, you're making offers to them, then check out Simplero. It's simplero.com. That's our all-in-one platform for online coaches, creators to run their whole damn business in one place, so you can get more customers and grow their business and just have more time for themselves and the things that they love. As for me, calvincorreli.com, as well as Calvin Correli on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all of the places. That's how you connect with me. If you're 7-8 figure entrepreneur looking for coaching, I have this coaching program coming up. We're going to go together and do this kind of work in person, and as well as online, and follow each other and support each other in the journey. And I'm super excited about that. So if that's something that's interesting, reach out to me. You can also email me, just calvin@simplero.com, and feel free to reach out.
So make sure you check out the links below in the show notes. We'll put all of that there. And also the books that you've mentioned, I'll make sure I include those for people that were curious around the books for personal development and growth.
And on the note of books, I actually have one that is not ready yet, but it's coming out maybe later this year, maybe early next year, called You Are the Product. So about the whole inner journey of inner growth, of like becoming that radically attractive character person that attracts clients and team members and partners and whatnot. So it's coming up.
Oh, wow. I'd love to have you back on the show when that's out, so you can talk about it if you're willing to. That would be amazing.
Of course. Love to.
So remember, everyone, this show is all about brain health, unchaining your pain. You are not stuck with the brain you have the power to make it better. And Calvin has been kindly here to show us how on his amazing entrepreneurial journey. Thanks for coming on the show, Calvin.
Thank you so much, Ruth. And thanks to everybody who's listening today, and love you and appreciate that you're on this journey. It's the most important journey that you can be on. Thank you so much, everybody.
I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to like and share this episode and leave a review on my website or on Apple Podcasts. If you're looking for opportunities to optimize your brain health or unchain your pain from a past trauma, make sure you visit my website www.ruthmaryallen.com and use the code podcast10 at checkout to get 10% off all programs. And always remember, you are not stuck with the brain you have. You have the power to make it better. You have the power to unchain your pain and optimize your brain power and performance so that you can win back energy and time doing what you love.